Imagine feeling like no matter how hard you try, you still feel like you're falling behind. Like no matter how far you go in your career, you feel like your health and your happiness are slowly slipping away. That's where Delaina was in 2021. She was 100 pounds overweight. She was overwhelmed. She was extremely stressed. And it felt like she might not ever get control of this area of her health and her well being. But today, she's made a miraculous transformation. And I do not use that word lightly. She has lost 80 pounds. She's run multiple marathons and she's done it all while becoming a lawyer. Incredible, superhuman work here. So I hope that with this story that we share with you of Delaina's journey over the last 4 years, that no matter where you're at in your journey or what is on your plate right now, you feel inspired, you feel motivated, and you build belief that you can do this too. You can make a transformation. You can get to the other side of the current struggles that you're in and get to victory. That said, we're so excited to crack this open with Delaina. So, Delaina, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Conquer the Day once again. We're happy
Thank
to have
you.
you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun.
It's an honor, and we have some huge wins to celebrate. So, Delane, I know we're
So
going to
fair.
talk about this throughout the podcast, but what are we celebrating today? What has been the big milestone that you recently cracked?
So I recently finished the New York City Marathon in November of 2024, and that's been my most exciting life event as of recently.
Yeah, that says a
Yes.
lot, right? Because you've had some big life events, some things that are
Yeah.
just continuing to grow. What was that like to be able to check that off the box and do it successfully? How did it feel going through that process?
I think all of my, I've run 3 marathons, and of all 3 of them, I mean, there's nothing like the first one, but there's nothing like a world major marathon with the world's largest organized marathon. So just to have that opportunity to even be able to cross that start line, let alone the finish, was something that I could only dream of, and something that I don't even think that I thought I was capable of dreaming of even a few years ago. So it's been a wild journey.
That's
So
amazing.
cool. What was the best part?
Oh my gosh, I was like crying a lot of not just from pain, mostly from joy and just like pure
No.
gratitude. I think the most exciting part of the New York City Marathon is the electric energy of the crowds. You just get screamed at for over 5 hours. and it's a lot of just everything around you. You're like so overstimulated. You got to also be careful because you're going to want to thank everyone who screams your name, but it also drains your energy.
Yeah.
It's
To
it's
modulate.
just an unreal feeling, and the whole experience was the most emotional thing I've ever been through.
Mhm.
What was the arc of emotion? What do you think the emotions were
Yeah, as
just
you went
starting
through it.
off, going through? Obviously, there's excitement, but what do you think the emotions that came up during it were?
I think it started with nerves,
Mhm.
but nerves of excitement. It wasn't so much that I wasn't sure I could do it or finish, because I know I've finished a couple marathons before, but there was a lot of logistics throughout the day. You had to get up very early, take a ferry to Staten Island. That's like something that you don't really have for many other, or maybe any other marathons. It's a lot. And so you're kind of in this whole new realm of marathoning, and it's really intense. And so you get this incredible view to start, and you hear Frank Sinatra's New York, New York at the start line when you go over the bridge. And it's the only way I can describe it is just surreal. Like it's an out of body experience. So the emotions were so intense. I don't even know if I could put them all into words, because I don't think I've ever felt more intense emotions than during this marathon. I went through immense joy and gratitude and pride and nerves and thankfulness, and just everything around me was just out of a dream. I couldn't comprehend it all. And I still, even thinking back on it, like it's very hard for me to really process it, because it was just so unlike anything I've ever done.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds euphoric.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good word for it.
New York City Marathon And if you choose to have children, it'll be childbirth. Those will
Yeah.
just be your euphoria moments and
Yeah.
getting married, all those things. Yeah, that's amazing. What an experience.
What was it like crossing the finish line? To actually
Um,
say you've completed it, you've done it, to actually experience the fulfillment of the dream.
I burst into tears like immediate. Like I saw, and as I was approaching the finish line too, it was amazing. My friend Francis was over in the grandstands with Malcolm, my fiance, and they were both just cheering me on. I saw them and I just started crying, and I was just so, I get emotional right now. So it was amazing. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I was so happy. I still am.
What a gift.
Why do you think it was so amazing? If you think of the arc of everything you've gone through, because the reason why I asked this too, I'll preface it a little bit, because someone might hear this and think, oh, well, it's great that she ran a marathon.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're going to go back to the beginning and talk more about that. But why was that so significant to you? What made it so significant? What made it such an important moment in your journey?
I think this one was extra special because I had obviously we'll get into the weeds of it all, but I have lost 80 pounds and I've come a long way. And there was a time that I couldn't run a mile, and there was a time that I wasn't enthusiastic about exercise at all, let alone running. I used to run as a kid with my dad, and it was a great time. But in middle school, I stopped running and started becoming more aware of my body and self-conscious, um and was overweight then, and kind of just was like, I don't know how to exercise in a way that brings me joy. It felt like a chore, and it felt like something that a kid shouldn't have to worry about too. So kind of growing up, it was kind of a sore thing that I stopped running and couldn't find joy in it anymore. And it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I picked it up again, for fun. I was on my cross country team, and my sister actually encouraged me to sign up, and that was fun to have that experience with her. And then I stopped again, but it was so it was more casual. And when I started working with the fitness project, I wasn't running, and I thought maybe Lindsay and I were working on getting myself back in the gym, starting with little habits like going on 15-minute walks, things like that. And I was like, I used to run. Maybe I should try it again. And we had that conversation, and it was hard at first. And I was, taking walk breaks in the first mile and couldn't do that full mile without stopping in between. And then to be able to fast forward, decide, to jump into some more distance running, picked up a half marathon, saw how that went, and then thought I had this moment one day where I was like, maybe I can run a marathon. Like, it's just cool to see the progression of how my thoughts changed over time. Like, I went from not even being sure if I should run again, but maybe giving a shot, then to changing all of these, the way I saw myself and what I could do, and ended up running 3 marathons. So I guess to answer your question back to where you asked me, just why this one was extra special. I've seen myself run multiple marathons, and the first one was to finish. The second one was because I wasn't impressed with my finish time, and I knew I trained for better, so it was kind of a little bit of a comeback. And then New York City was my first world major, and it was going to be extra special because I really wanted to commit to performance. So I started working with Steven, and really dedicated my time to really pushing myself athletically in a way that in my other marathons, not to say that they weren't athletic endeavors, of course they were, but this was a totally
Right.
different shift for
Yeah.
me. I really put aside the weight loss aspect, which was a focus in both of my other marathon trainings. I kept that weight loss in there as much as I could. But this one, I kind of let go of that, and really just pushed performance.
Yes.
So, and then if I might also add another thing that was extra meaningful, I went through just my own personal battles with depression 10 years before. It was around the anniversary of that for this marathon, and I shared this before personally, but I'll share it to viewers because I'm sure it's a battle that a lot of people deal with. But I did ponder, taking my life at one point. It was really dark. It was a tough time for me, and to just think I'm much better now. Everything's good now with me, but to think about the severity of that and to see 10 years later what I've accomplished,
Yeah.
and to know like my life is as good as it's ever been, and it's the best it's ever been, and I am immensely grateful for all of the opportunities I've been given and the opportunities I've given myself by giving myself my health. So I know that's a very long answer, but I
Beautiful.
think it was
Oh, that's
important.
beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, that shows everyone too the transformation that awaits on the other side of keeping your faith and your courage, not confidence, but your courage to keep growing. But
Yeah. And the courage is the key word because even the first conversations we had, I mean, you almost just alluded to exactly where you were when you first started and you couldn't run a mile and you were overweight and you were just feeling really low. But take us back to 2021, just before you actually made that shift, because one decision changed everything for you. But I'm sure there were multiple decisions leading up to it. So in 2021, what was your mindset about health? We now know your mindset, how it was around running,
Mm.
but how was it around health and how you took care of yourself? Or how did you think about health at that point in time?
So in 2021, it was tricky. Obviously, we had all just gone through COVID. We were
True.
coming out of that. That was another challenge. So any good habits I had were totally different after COVID because we just all had to adapt in whatever ways we could. I did pick up some good habits during COVID, like walking, but I had dabbled before 2021 with some other weight loss programs. I had struggled in college with just my body image issues and some really unhealthy dieting that was borderline just not eating. Um, so I think a lot of people have gone through similar things where we try a lot of like fads or these like really intense diets just to try to quickly lose weight and hope that it all goes away at once. It won't, but we're hopeful. And so, but when I came to you guys, I was overwhelmed. I didn't really have any habits in place anymore. And I started to realize that those quick fix diet things, they weren't working, they weren't long term, and I couldn't sustain them. I didn't have those exercise habits in place anymore. I didn't have the time to go to the gym regularly or what I thought was do much of any exercise regularly. I had just started law school at the beginning of 2020, so that was an extremely stressful time in my life as well. In 2021, I had just started a new job. So I had law school, I had a new job, and I was at an all-time high for my weight. And so all of these very big changes in my life and very stressful things in my life were causing me to feel like I was really losing control and I needed a change.
And what was the actual thought, if you remember, where you said that's enough?
I think I was scrolling through Facebook, I believe, and I had accidentally happenstance stumbled upon, I believe it was your post through the fitness project about a client you had who had been a similar weight to the weight that I was at the time, and she had lost, I think it was around 50 pounds or 60 pounds, and I was like, I just stopped on that post. I don't know, I think I was kind of in this constant state of just worrying about my weight and stuff, but that kind of stopped me. And I remember reading something you had in the post along the lines of, like there's so many diets people do, but like, why don't they stick? And you had specifically mentioned how the fitness project aims to like actually implement and teach habits to people and take the time so that people can actually grow with the program and learn from it and take the tools to do things on their own and then never need to go and buy another quick 6-week program or South Beach cookbook, whatever it is, all those fads. And I was so drawn to that because I was like, well, that's the problem. I
Mhm.
have done all of these other things kind of mindlessly, just hoping maybe this person who wrote this whatever knows what they're talking about because here's some quick results. Sure, I can lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks. I had done it before, but guess what? It all came back. Why? Why was that happening? And something about your post made me think, I think maybe they have an answer.
Hmm.
So I reached out.
Ah, well, I'm glad that, or we're both glad, we're all glad that we did, right?
Yeah.
Apparently it worked. I'm curious, when you started, what did your habits look like for the first 2 to 3 months, right? When you actually started getting in the process of change, what did you have to start with? And I think that that's really important because a lot of times people feel like, oh, I'm starting something, I've got to really commit, I got to go all out. But what did you start with at the beginning? I don't even know. I'm not even sure if Lindsay remembers, but for you, what were like the
I
things you
remember
focused on?
everything.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I remember, and I'll never forget it, and it's kind of my baseline now, even if I'm feeling lazy, is Lindsay told me just 15 minutes a day of movement. Like, start with that, start small. We don't have to get in the gym every single day. And I gave her my schedule. And at the time, my schedule was incredibly demanding. I really wanted someone who's going to be able to realistically look at my schedule and say, here's how we can make this work. Because that's also the other problem with all these other things I had been doing was like they were tailored to people who probably, let's be real, probably didn't have jobs or their job was like bodybuilding. Like it's just not realistic to the working people. And it's hard. So I sent Lindsay over my schedules. We looked at it. She saw like, oh no, you're not exaggerating. Like I leave the house at 7. I get home sometimes at 11:30 because I would go to law school after work because I worked full time. Um, and so I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And she was like, let's, if anything, we'll start with the 15 minutes a day. And then I started taking my lunch breaks as walks. And I was like, I don't take a full hour to just eat. So why not eat and then go on a walk for the rest of my time? And so that started becoming like a regular habit that I did. That was the biggest thing because now I walk every single day on my lunch break. It's like all I I look like I love it. And so we started with that. That was a big thing to begin with. Then, there were things like, oh, you don't have to cut out sweets. I know that that's another thing that a lot of people think that you have to do is you have to cut out carbs, you have to cut out all sugar, and that's not sustainable. And so you guys were really great about saying, no, no, we want you to be set up for long term. And we know that you're not going to cut carbs for the rest of your life. And also, carbs are not just bread, carbs are in everything, okay? So we don't have to just eliminate your whole diet and everything you eat and throw it out and say you can only eat protein. It's just silly. So everything that you guys focused on was small habits, keeping things into your diet that you enjoy so that way you don't get sick of eating a certain way if you have bland just ground turkey and vegetables and that's it or whatever that crash diets are telling you. And I started there and was like, oh, so I can keep a little sweet after dinner for dessert, but like let me just think about a better option. So now I'll have like a Yasso bar. I don't know if everyone knows what those are, but they're like little frozen Greek yogurt bars. And it's 100 calories, and I still get my chocolate ice cream fix, but it's a healthy version of it. So that's how I would answer that
Oh, I
question.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's so key. I mean, I think that those small habits that people don't give themselves credit for, but would actually move the needle forward, having you explain at the beginning of this, the marathon, the experience of really elite levels of training and how it started with 15 minutes of walking.
Yeah.
It's that simple if you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
And it can be that simple if you allow it to be too.
Yes. The faith, the trust is key,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and what while we're talking about faith and trust, what were some of the biggest mental hurdles? Because the thing that people don't anticipate is the internal work that's going to ensue naturally. They expect that they're going to get frustrated or impatient. Like they expect some of those challenges, perhaps, which is also why there's a lot of fear around even starting in the first place is what if I fail? I'm going to get impatient. What if it doesn't work? All that stuff. But for you, when you were in those first few months, I got the sense that you trusted me specifically, but what was going on in your head and what were some of those initial just struggles or battles that you had to work yourself through, maybe even in the first like 3 to 6 months?
I think that getting started is easy. I think we all, if we're ready to get started, we have the motivation, we have the goal. Everything's very fresh, very clear. It's the thick of it that gets hard, like you were saying. Like, we do anticipate that we're going to have some pushback and we're not going to want to do certain things, but I don't think that's ever really, stopped many people at the beginning. I think people still start when everyone has the best of intentions, but you have to know that time will come when you're going to start to either question yourself, question your goals, maybe, and things also start to slow down. Like, another one big thing for me that I know I really started to feel the frustration of it all was the weight. Because I had so much to lose at the beginning, it came off very quickly at first. And that is always motivating because you're like, you can look at the scale and you can actually see tangible evidence that what you're doing is working and your results are here. But what gets difficult is inevitably, as you lose more weight, you have less to lose, and the weight starts to fall off slower. Your body starts to adjust to things and get used to things, and your habits start to become normalized in your body, and your body kind of expects them. So it doesn't get as much result unless things get changed up again. So getting to those points with you, and when I'd start to see the scale stay the same or just not budge, or some days it would even slightly go up, and I was doing all the same things. I was doing everything that we had planned for me to do, whether it was my calorie deficit, hitting those macros, hitting my calorie goals, doing all of the exercises that we had talked about. You can be doing all of the work perfectly, but it's a very hard pill to swallow, that sometimes doesn't mean that your progress is going to be the same speed the whole time. So
Yeah.
the progress not linear thing, it's very real, and it's very frustrating even for me still. Like, it still is. It's not like I lose 80 pounds and then everything's easy for me, and it's still tough. But if you learn that motivation is not as important as the discipline that you need to continue, as long as you know that and you're able to refocus yourself on your goals and not use those moments of stagnancy to deter you and make you question if things are really working, if you can just stay focused and know that that is going to happen, even if you're doing all the right things, then you're going to be fine, because you have to just keep moving forward. Forward progress is still progress, even if things are not moving in the speed you want.
Yeah, and I think that the
Mm,
challenge for people is that
good.
they think they have to commit more time when sometimes you just need to commit more intensity.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that 15-minute walk might have to become a 15-minute jog. That time that you're spending doesn't need to necessarily expand. Right. So I think that the mindset shift is, oh my gosh, I'm already putting as much time into this as I can. And it's not necessarily the time that has to always increase, it's the intensity. It's I'm going to push myself a little bit more to walk faster, or I'm going to maybe raise the bar of what I do expect from myself. And I think that there has to be those points where when you're taking a massive goal and breaking it down into the increments, there's the starting point where you do get momentum, you do get leverage, and that sets you up to be 15 pounds down. But if you want to go from 15 to 25 or 15 to 30, there has to be that shift. And it's kind of like when you're in college. The first part of it, you get in the rhythm of learning, but as you advance, you have to write longer papers.
Yeah.
You have to cite different works. You have to
Harder
actually
things.
learn and apply what you're learning.
Yeah,
So it's the
that's
same thing here. You have to apply what you're learning, and you can't be a victim to feeling like it's not happening fast enough. there's the toggle of patience and intensity that actually allow you to make the progress that you need to. So it sounds like you kept doing that, right? You kept raising the bar, finding that next pillar, and that's what actually allowed you to advance.
Yeah. And there's something you said that was really, really important. You said the speed decreases, which is a totally different belief and frame than it's not working.
Mm,
Because it's not working suggests that we have halted and we might actually be going in the wrong direction now. That's what that means. Versus, oh, my speed of progress has slowed means we're still making progress. It's just slower. We're
yes.
still moving. Versus, again, the it's not working means we need to, we're going the wrong direction. We need to course correct. It's like very
Mm.
subtle, but that's a big difference in like where that leads, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that takes practice too. Like I'm sure all of us kind of have had our moments where we did think that we were regressing when it just wasn't at the speed we want. And it's one thing that comes with the more you push forward through those moments, the more you learn, yeah, okay, this will pass. We'll get to where we need to go.
Is that what pulled you through? Like those, because you had, I'm sure you had different periods of that where you felt conflict, but what pulled you through?
That pulls me through as long as I can stay focused. Or sometimes, I mean, honestly, sometimes I need help too, and I'll reach out to a friend, or I'll reach out to you, or reach out to Steven. Just be like, hey, this is really a big mental block for me right now. I know that this isn't really regression, but I need you to kind of encourage me because I'm getting stressed about it. So like you have to catch yourself too. Like sometimes like I'm not able to come out of the funk. And but reaching out to others to kind of keep you on track helps. I do that with Malcolm all the time too. We're both like, "Hey, how's it going? It's okay. It's gonna be fine." Malcolm's my fiance, by the way, for those who don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's a big point because we're
Yeah, that's
so,
huge.
and maybe I'm wrong with this statement, but I feel like since COVID, we all are more remote. We're more isolated. There's less human connection.
Mm,
And there is also this sense of negativity bias that is stronger now because of the way the world is reacting to certain things. Doesn't, I'm not diminishing any of it. It's just there's negativity bias of seeing more of what's wrong. Our news feed's wrong. Everything's chaotic. And what I think is hard is we don't have a positive influence that toggles each other back because we're oftentimes in our own isolated chamber. And that feedback loop from a friend or a mentor or a guide is so helpful. And I think I just want to highlight that because it's something that you did. And I think that sometimes people feel like they do have to do it alone.
Or they
yeah.
And
shouldn't feel like they're in a funk.
yeah, and then if you try to do it by yourself and you're not getting that feedback of what's going well or what needs to be reframed or maybe just the space to be able to process it out loud and then see for yourself, it can be really challenging to have the faith long term. And it sounds like you were able to find that balance between the right support system around you too.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing thing, you know. I think I want to be honest about that too. Like I do still have those times where I get frustrated. And I don't want anyone to go into this thinking, once I figure everything out, it'll be fine and I'll never feel this way again. No, I think everyone, I'm sure you guys have those moments too where things get frustrating and you just have to do what you have to do to reset yourself. So I think everyone needs to keep that in mind. Like this is not professional people telling you it's always going to be, puppies and rainbows after you something clicks. Like, we're all here to have a conversation about why fitness can be challenging and but why it's so worth investing in.
Very true.
I want to tie this down with one point. One of the things I tell people is that action cures everything. And what I mean by that is when you're not feeling motivated, the best thing you can do is take an action. And that action might be reaching out to a friend, that might be meditating, that might be going for a walk, that might be choosing to put your phone away, that might be choosing to go for the run. But I think that when we get stuck, we're so in our head that we almost feel like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I can do. And then we gravitate back towards our negative baseline, right? We go back to the comfort food, or we start skipping the workouts, or we are saturating ourselves with things that don't serve our greater purpose. And being able to say in that moment, even though you don't feel like it, even though you're not happy and peppy, if you can find something that's at least progress, that cures most of the feelings. Or
Yeah.
at least when I say cures it, it makes it so you can at least have something that
Shifts
you're
your
aiming
state.
at.
Yeah,
I
shifts your
agree.
state. When if you were not necessarily telling yourself, but perhaps if you experienced it, if somebody was in that spot, whether like right at this moment listening to this, where they are going in their mind to the place where they're questioning whether or not it's possible, worth it, and they have the did I make the wrong decision? Doesn't matter whether they're working with us or just working on the goal by themselves, and they took a path, they took a direction, they started going that way, they made some progress, but the progress again isn't fast enough. And they're telling themselves it doesn't work. And they're starting to toggle between like, should I disengage and give up? At that point where you catch somebody, what do you say or what do you ask to pull them to the other side, knowing you've experienced it?
Yeah, I guess I would ask, what do you want?
Mm,
Because it's a simple question. But when you get to the depth of that question, I don't think anyone really, because if you say, "Do you want to give up?" and someone's like, "Yeah, I want to give up." No, you don't. No, you don't. When you say I want to give up, what I'm hearing is you don't want to give up. You want this to work out and you're upset that it's not. So what you really want isn't to quit. So don't do that to yourself. Don't quit on yourself. Don't give yourself a reason to fall behind on something that is actually working out, even though it doesn't feel like it in this present small moment in time. Tomorrow could be a great day for you. But if you give up now, you won't know that. You won't know that. You could have another bad day because you were like, ah, screw it. I'm going to eat the whole tub of Ben and Jerry's because I am not seeing my scale move today. So then guess what? Tomorrow, unfortunately, you're not going to see the scale go down again. So it's tough, but just get down to the depth of what do you really want? It's not to quit. I can assure you that.
Love that.
beautiful. Snip that one right there and post just that. That's excellent. So let's go outward because the other part of what do you want is reminding people of how far this ripples. Originally, your vision included this whole picture of you being a lawyer and being in your power suit, or there was this whole image. So I'm curious, when it came to your career, it's not that you had to lose weight to be successful per se, but I can only imagine how much that impacts your ability to show up or have conversations or negotiate or other give presentations. I know that was more school perhaps, but how did this ripple into how you're showing up in your career specifically or the work you do?
So for me, I think a lot of fitness and weight loss and everything that comes with that, whether it's feeling confident or just actually being happier because of all the endorphins, and not just sitting around. I think for me, my biggest thing was at the beginning when I was at my heaviest, I think I even said this to you. I wanted people to respect me and I didn't feel like at the weight that I was getting the same amount of respect as people who were not as heavy as I was. Whether this is true or not, it didn't matter to me. That's how I felt.
Hmm.
And so as I've started to continue through this journey, I realized I don't know if I was actually correct in saying that. I think what I meant was I don't respect myself. I don't know if it really was other people I was worried about. I was certainly worried about what other people thought of me at that weight, but I think it was actually my own internal struggle. I really don't think people looked at me and thought, "Oh, she's heavy. I don't respect her." You know? But so I think through this I actually gained the respect for myself. I don't think or know necessarily if anyone else's opinion of me has changed, but mine of myself has. And I think as a direct result of that, I have gotten the confidence. I have been more assertive in my job, my relationships with people, what I want out of life. And I've discovered a lot about myself that I didn't know before, like my passions, like running. Um, and I think as well, you know, in my work life, like a lot, my job is giving legal advice. So, I mean, I have to be confident in the advice I'm giving. And, so it's like the confidence that I've gained from my weight loss journey and from running marathons and seeing what an athlete I am. Not just I lost weight, but I'm an athlete and I can do incredible things that I never imagined I would ever do. And so like becoming that person, becoming a three-time marathoner, becoming someone that I feel like I'm a role model for myself. If someone I can, I'm excited that I could look up to myself if I was a little me. Like I would be so excited about who I've become if I was talking to a toddler version of me. I just it makes me happy to think about how all of this journey has given me like so much in many aspects of my life, not just my health. I can see it in my relationships. Um, I also love that being active has given me more life in my relationship with my fiance. Even we go on runs all the time and walks all the time, and it's so awesome to be able to have that time together. No phones, just us exploring new places, doing something active. We both get something out of it for our health, and it helps make our relationship stronger. So there's just so many great things that have come out of this for me.
It's the ripple effect in full effect. I
Yes.
love that. Yeah,
What
it's awesome.
what do you think comes next? As you're in this process and in this journey, you've accomplished
Good
so much.
question.
What is the continued evolution of your growth? Or maybe a better way of putting that, how do you feel about the continuation of living a healthy life?
I think it's an ongoing process. I don't think it's something that you can hit a goal and then check it off a list and say, "All right, I'm done." Once I've hit X amount of pounds or whatever that I want to be at. It's something that you're constantly going to have to work towards and maintaining a healthy weight and maintaining your healthy life. So for me, the evolution just looks like continuing to keep these awesome habits and passions in my life that I have found. I am happy that the walking habit has stuck so much. It's one of my favorite parts of each day. I don't anticipate giving that up anytime soon. So things like that, where I even picture, when we have kids, I want to take them on daily walks, things like that. Like I want to get them excited about being active, making good choices, and feeling good about their health. And I don't ever want them to feel self-conscious of their bodies. I just really want to create a life for my family that is just creating these habits and giving tools to them so that they can also receive these benefits that I have picked up along the way. And I also hope that I'm still running marathons into my old age. You see these 70-plus-year-olds crossing finish lines, and it's so inspiring because it just goes to show, like, if you're healthy, like the sky's the limit. Like, obviously there are cases where, not everyone's able to do that, and I know that it's not a given. But what a way to appreciate life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One thing that we talk about oftentimes is the stories that we all have, right? And those stories are linked to our beliefs and our values about ourselves. And we oftentimes say that habit change is your identity change, right? So I'm curious, what do you think your old story was about Delaina and her limitations? And what is her new story? What is her new identity? How has that shifted through this whole process and this whole journey over the years?
Yeah, so my old story probably was just that I'm not an athlete. I had goals for myself, but it was always kind of out of reach feeling. I don't really think, I always felt like I was capable of doing whatever I put my mind to, but for some reason, being at a healthy weight seemed so difficult that I was never positive I could get there. And I felt at some points in my life that I kind of might just have to accept that this is just who I am. Thankfully, that's not the narrative that I have for myself anymore. And I'm a much healthier version, happier version of myself now. Um, so I think that, all I can say is now I am exactly who I've always wanted to be. I've become a lawyer. I've become a marathoner. back my old self, I never even wanted to run a marathon. It wasn't even in my vision for myself at all. I thought it was a dumb thing. My dad had run many, and I thought that was insane and probably bad for you. But
That's
I
funny.
found that like it's something I really enjoy. So I'm happy with this new identity I have in myself. Like I'm a runner, I'm a marathoner, and I want to keep doing that. And I want to keep making good choices for myself because I'm a better person for it.
Mm,
Mm,
beautiful.
beautiful.
Thanks.
Like standing ovation. And what I would share and impart to breaking the fourth wall to you who's listening is that if you're in the thick of it right now, you have to anchor back to what you want. You have to anchor back to what you actually want, which is not to give up, not to let yourself fall off. It's to build a version of yourself that you can genuinely respect. You can respect, you can honor, you can grow into. And when you get to where you want to be, remember that it is a constant evolution. You have growth to look forward to for the rest of your life. There is no end until it's actually the end. And you want to get to your end and imagine that you've lived the best life that you possibly can. And so, what I hear from your story is that you're doing that for yourself. You're letting your and allowing yourself to do that. You're enjoying the journey. And lastly, you followed the breadcrumbs, which I think is where people get lost, which is funny.
Mhm.
Funny how that Hansel and Gretel metaphor works well.
No, we're not a
But
bunch of witches though.
when you, yeah, but when you go into a health journey, if you're so intense and so frustrated and so angry the whole time, and you beat yourself up the whole time, you're never going to get those little sparks of, I wonder if I could run a half marathon.
Mm.
Oh well, maybe I should run a full marathon. I wonder if I could. Because those are little magic, little sparks, right? And they lit a fire clearly, and you started running and going with it and leaning into it. And you don't get those if you just live in a constant state of self-judgment and feeling like you're never far enough, you're always behind. So you have to change those stories and embrace the process and embrace the journey in order to get those little breadcrumbs that come to you, or those sparks that take you to your next level. So that's what I would at least encapsulate to give to the person who's listening. But Delaina, does that resonate with you
Is there
based on
any
what you
last
said?
pieces of advice you might give to that person too?
Yeah, you know what? I had two words that really pulled me through some tough days. And I actually got bracelets made of them because I was so I needed something to anchor myself. So I would pass along these words, patience and purpose. I think if you really dig deep into those words, you're going to find that you're able to anchor yourself and hang on because it does take patience, especially on the days that things aren't going your way. Um, but you have a purpose. That's the thing you have to anchor yourself to. Because if you can do that, you can pull yourself out of this little rut that's, again, it's just a blip in time. It's not forever. Tomorrow could be better. Maybe it's not tomorrow, could be next week. But you're never going to know if you take a step backwards instead of forwards.
Very
Amen.
true.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Jinx. Delaina, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this gift of this conversation, which is a true gift. It's raw, it's real, it's honest, and it's also incredibly uplifting. So, really grateful for your time and all the growth that you've had, and just really appreciate and honor you for the work you've put into yourself because it's all your work, right? We've been on the other side and seen it, and Lindsay's participated in it. I know I haven't coached you, Steve's participated in it, but it's been just a real honor to see and really proud of you.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate everything you do for both myself and the community.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Awesome, guys. And if you are listening to this, make sure that you leave us a review. Potentially consider going and finding Delaina. Just tell her how freaking awesome she is. Her social media is private, but she is an amazing, amazing light. And she actually has two other podcasts with us. So you can, if you want to hear more from her at different points of her journey, we interviewed her when she had lost her first 25, 30 pounds. It was like 6 months in. And then we interviewed her again, I think 18 months to 2 years in, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And now we're interviewing her again at that 4 year, just crazy how fast it goes.
Yeah.
A 4 year mark. So there are 2 other podcasts from Delaina if you want to dig back a little deeper into the rabbit hole. We'll link those below for you. So you can continue this inspiration loop that you might be in.
But thank you all for being here. Hope this imparts some motivation, some inspiration, and some focus for you. Take this all and go out and conquer your day.
Cheers.
Cheers.